after this deal, our country will still be careening towards bankruptcy.
We need to stop drilling for fossil fuels completely.
The law is a manifestation of white supremacy.
We have reached a debt ceiling agreement, but are Republicans going to get on board? It doesn't look like it, according to Twitter. White supremacy is the law, and the law is white supremacy. Both are the same things, according to college students nowadays. If you work at Lululemon and somebody steals clothes from your store, don't you dare call the police, or else you might get fired. And a ton more on this episode of Daily Caller Live. My name is Jobob. Thanks so much for tuning in. Daily Caller Live starts right now.
2, 1.
Here we go!
That might be the only brown guy on earth named Jobob.
That is actually her name, Jobob.
Live from the dingy bunker, completely cut off from the outside world, except for you fine folks. My name is Jobob. This is Daily Caller Live. Thanks so much for tuning in on today. It is Tuesday, May 30th, the year of our Lord 2023. Hope you had a great weekend. Hope you had a nice Memorial Day yesterday. A lot of stuff to catch you up on. Over the weekend, an agreement was reached between Kevin McCarthy and Joe Biden on the debt ceiling limit. Why does that matter? Well, it matters a lot. We haven't really talked about the debt ceiling a lot, but we're going to get into it today because it actually is now officially exciting, kind of. So yeah, let's just jump right into it. I thought my heading here was hilarious. Old cisgendered white men squabble, because that's what it is, according to a bunch of the people on the lefty side of the aisle. But in real terms, in reality, Joe Biden and Kevin McCarthy, the Speaker of the House of the Republican-controlled House, have been meeting for a couple weeks, even though they should have been meeting for a couple months, about whether or not we are going to raise the debt limit in this country. We are currently at, $32 trillion of debt. It is compounding and compounding and compounding, and we're getting more and more debt obligations. We're spending money currently, right now, the U.S. is spending money as a cocaine-riddled shopaholic would spend money. Actually, sorry. Let me rephrase that. The cocaine addict shopaholic looks at the U.S. spending and goes, oh my gosh, you guys are out of control. That's how much money we are spending. And the goal of Republicans, Kevin McCarthy specifically, was to try and get some of the spending at least a little bit under control. So they reached a quote-unquote agreement over the weekend and are supposed to vote on it Tuesday because Secretary of the Treasury Janet Yellen said that we're going to run out of money on June 1st, so we better figure this out by June 1st and raise the debt limit. We have not engaged in this topic much at all because I think the debt limit arguments are stupid. We definitely need to rein in spending, but the debt limit has been lifted 73 times, I believe, in the country's history. And therefore, all that tells me is that we are unserious about the debt limit in this country, and we need to rein in spending before we do anything else. That's the only thing that I care about personally. Matt Walsh was talking on his show on Friday about people trying to replace the IRS with this or that and this. And he says, abolish the IRS and just don't replace it. There's enough income in other places to fund a very, very powerful government, yet we still continue to have massive taxation that can't even cover the massive spending. That's a tangent that I don't want to get on. Anyways, so Kevin McCarthy says that they have a deal. A lot of the deal was hindering around work requirements, which if you know any of the vibe of this show, you're going to understand that we want work requirements. If you're able-bodied, you should be required to work before you get any sort of welfare. Like that goes without saying, duh. And also, a majority of Americans, if you look at polling, agree with that sentiment. But one of the big things was the SNAP proposal. It's some welfare food stamp program. We don't need to get into what it is specifically. But they tried to raise the age from 50 to 54. If you're 50 to 54, you now have to work. Anything under 50, you were supposed to have a work requirement or prove you were looking for a job or have some sort of training, be in some sort of training in order to get food stamps. Now that age has been bumped up to 54. Didn't really do a whole lot. So there's that. Okay, so that's what this whole thing was kind of hinging on. Kevin McCarthy came out Saturday saying, we have a win. But that is not what a lot of people in Congress were saying on the internet. Rand Paul has been one of the most fervent voices for cutting spending. He said fake conservatives agree to fake spending cuts, deal with increase. I'm gonna slow down here. Rand Paul said that fake conservatives agree to fake spending cuts. Deal will increase mandatory spending by about 5%, increase military spending by about 3%, and maintain current non-military discretionary funding in post-COVID levels. No real cuts to see here. Conservatives have been sold out once again. Wow, there's a lot of conservative or a lot of Republicans saying they're not going to vote for it. So the bottom line is that the spending limit is going to be increased through the 2024 elections. So about 2-ish years is the quote-unquote deal that McCarthy and Biden have come to. Honestly, I think it's going to get. I'm curious to see if he's going to be able to get the Republican caucus on board. According to Twitter, it doesn't look like he's going to be able to. But it's going to increase the debt limit by $2 trillion over the next 2 years and hopefully avoid this sort of dumb discussion until after the November election in 2024. Now, here's why I haven't been talking about this and why I think debt ceiling talks are stupid and also highly, highly, highly political. When you reach the spending limit that Congress has allowed, it's a self-imposed law that just kind of sets a limit of what Congress can spend. When you reach the debt limit, what happens, generally speaking? We've seen this in several cases before. Remember the quote-unquote government shutdowns that everybody panicked over? Well, that's what happens when you surpass the spending limit of the allotted amount of money that Congress has allowed you to spend. Now, here's where it gets political, and here's where I get super cynical about this. Whenever there is a debt limit breach or reach the debt limit, the first things to get cut at the federal spending level are not things that should get cut. They are teachers, military, and all of the things that people like and need. In other words, when the federal government is put in a situation where they need to cut some sort of spending, they immediately go after what's going to be the most politically advantageous. In other words, had this quote-unquote deal not get through, and it still might not get through, when we did reach the limit, Janet Yellen, the Treasury Secretary, said that it's June 1st, when we did reach the limit, the Biden administration would cut off funding for a lot of the things that people like. They would cut Social Security checks, and they would cut military personnel checks. And by cut them, not like write them a check, like eliminate them or furlough a lot of those people. And then they would say, well, Republicans didn't want to blah, 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 blah. That's why teachers aren't getting paid. That's why Medicare people or Medicaid or Social Security checks aren't being delivered. That's why military personnel aren't getting paid. When in actuality, if there were a need to actually cut spending, they would cut it in so many different places if they were being honest and not trying to make a political show out of it. In other words, as for last example, if you own a home and you have a dual income and your spouse loses their job, that's like saying, well, the first thing that we have to cut is the mortgage. We're just going to not pay the mortgage. No, you would cut so many things before that. You'd cut the Netflix account. You'd stop going out to eat as much. You would, I don't know, water your lawn less because the water bill. Maybe you'd use less electricity because of the air conditioning. There are so many things that you would cut before you just stopped paying your mortgage. That is what these debt ceiling talks are always like. if we do run out of money, the thing that we cut first is not going to be in an adult society, teachers and social security checks and military personnel and payments to the interest on the debt. It would be idiotic to cut those things first. Yet those are the political levers being wielded by people who want to maintain political control and blame the other side for that. So I always say this, but I would maybe the next time debt ceiling talks are in the works, I'd revert back to this video and say they're always stupid regardless who is in power. And it is a sign of the childlike behavior of our country as a whole in terms of spending money. So that's it. There's about $2 trillion. Let me see if I can get to some of the tweets that I was reading earlier about the debt ceiling. Debt ceiling. Basically, a lot of I saw Byron Donalds said that he's not going to vote for it. Nancy Mace says Washington is broken. I'm voting no on the debt ceiling. Byron Donalds says it's a no. Wesley Hunt, congressman from Texas, is saying no on the debt ceiling agreement. Mike Lee saying no. He's a senator, right? No, maybe. Yeah, he's a senator from Utah. Let's see. You can just scroll through. Lauren Boebert saying no. Chip Roy saying no. It's going to be really interesting to see if Kevin McCarthy can rally the Republicans to vote yes on this bill. Obviously, it's going to be a bipartisan thing, so they're going to have a significant amount of Democrats. But it'll be really interesting to see, if what happens, what comes out of it. I'm not playing this for any sort of political reason. I just thought it was funny. Ron DeSantis was on Fox and Friends this morning yesterday morning, talking about the debt ceiling agreement, and he hit the nail right on the head, regardless of whether or not you're a Trump person or a DeSantis person or a Tim Scott person. This is just true. Check it out.
Well, prior to this deal, Kaylee, our country was careening towards bankruptcy. And after this deal, our country will still be careening towards bankruptcy. And to say you can do $4 trillion of increases in the next year and a half, I mean, that's a massive amount of spending. I think that we've gotten ourselves on a trajectory here really since March of 2020 with some of the COVID spending. It totally reset the budget, and they're sticking with that. And I think that that's just going to be totally inadequate to get us in a better spot.
Yeah, so the governor of Florida is right. None of this looks good. Interesting comments here. This is from Rick saying Social Security was originally designed to not be touched, but the government has been steadily stealing from it for decades. Yes, that is true. And also, I don't know if people know this about Social Security. We've talked about it a couple times on this show. Social Security as an investment fund performs horribly. In other words, if you have a super safe mutual fund investment, if you have a 401k, really any other private regulated sector investment in the market that is going to be a fund that grows and is able to pay people out in their retirement, it has done 10 times better than the Social Security fund. Yes, the government pillages Social Security. Yes, it needs to be propped up. Yes, it is overbuilt and doesn't take in nearly enough money to sustain itself. Pretty much all of the financial experts think Social Security will be insolvent in the next 10 years. So yes, all of those things are true. And also, it is a horribly performing fund. Here's this. If you give the government a job to do, such as increase the Social Security fund, in other words, grow the pie by making smart and wise investments, they will not do that. I think the Social Security fund is at like less than 1% growth year over year since it started. Also, Social Security was originally intended to help the bottom 5% of earners / income revenue generators. Then it went up to 50%, and now it's all encompassing for everybody. So Social Security as a program, I understand, especially a lot of people watching this, a lot of people have been like, we paid into Social Security our entire lives. Yes, and it still doesn't work. So I don't know what to tell you. Maybe you're upset that people are talking about reforming Social Security, but it doesn't work. Everybody pays into Social Security, and regardless of all of that, it still is not an effective fund that manages itself in a way that it's supposed to. All right, moving on from the old cisgendered white men squabbling, onto this. I thought this was a fascinating thing going on in our country. Now, I would like to be fair on this and talk a little bit about some of the actual underlying problems here, because a lot of it is soft on crime policies, but a lot of it is big time corporate entities and their attorneys. Well, I'll explain that after we watch this clip. Bottom line here is 2 workers at a Lululemon store, a retailer, were fired for calling the cops on thieves breaking in and stealing things from the store. I don't know if they broke in. Thieves walked in and walked out with a ton of product, and these 2 women were fired for calling the police. It's true. Watch this. I think this is from CBS. It's rather long, but it's also pretty good. Check it out, and we'll discuss on the other side. Watch this.
No. Seriously. Get out.
2 Georgia women say they were fired from their jobs at Lululemon after calling police to report this robbery, which one of them caught on camera.
No, you can.
Jennifer Ferguson and Rachel Rogers describing to NBC affiliate 11 Alive Atlanta the horrifying moments the merchandise at the Peachtree Corner store was stolen.
They swiped until they couldn't hold any more product and ran out the door.
We didn't really feel very protected or know what else to do.
The women say they were fired from their jobs after they decided to call the police about the shoplifting, something they say they were told is against company policy. So what are they supposed to do instead?
You kind of clear a path for whatever they're going to do, and then after it's over, you scan a QR code.
Rogers, who says she's worked at the company for 5 years, claims that the store has been dealing with thefts for months, recalling another incident.
Someone sent me a picture of the front entrance table, and I was like, oh my gosh, we just sold all the product, good job. And they were like, no, someone just came in and stole everything.
But this was the first time she knows of someone at the store calling police, which local authorities confirm. The Fayette County Sheriff's Office says 3 men have been charged with theft by shoplifting and theft by receiving stolen property from that incident, and they're currently in the Fayette County Jail. Videos of brazen shoplifting have gone viral from stores across the country, and it's common practice for retailers to tell their employees not to intervene.
Yeah, that's what I thought was kind of fascinating about this. Is it crazy? Yes, 100%. Is it brought on by soft on crime policies? Yes, absolutely. Especially in the state of Georgia. Wow, that's pretty interesting. What I think is happening here is places like California, for example, have these ridiculous propositions that have gone into effect and have completely deteriorated the society as a whole, especially in terms of shoplifting and stealing stuff. There was a bill in California called Prop 49, maybe it was Prop 47, Prop 57, AB 109. Those are the 3 big decriminalizers in California. And what they did is they lowered shoplifting crimes to basically traffic tickets, and made it very, very possible for people to steal stuff. And when it's possible for people to steal stuff and not face any repercussions of their actions, guess what? People steal stuff. And I think what has happened is that sort of culture has been exported to a lot of the other states, even states like Georgia, that are probably pretty harsh on criminals. Yet people see videos from places from San Francisco, Los Angeles, all throughout California, all throughout New York, and say, well, I can get away with this here too. And they do it around the rest of the country. Fortunately, at the end of that clip, you saw that 3 people were in jail for those thefts. But at the end of the day, I think the culture of criminality from blue states is getting exported across the rest of the country. Now, as for retailers, especially national retailers like Lululemon, I can speak to Target because I worked there my first job out of college. I was a manager at Target for a year. Yes, retailers tell you that you shouldn't call the or you shouldn't intervene when somebody is shoplifting. And the reason for that is because if you intervene and there's an altercation and somebody gets hurt, they're going to be out more money if that person sues the company. Say, for example, if somebody is walking out of a Target with $100 worth of clothes, right? The Target Corporation, as a business decision, would rather let that $100 go than risk the possibility of getting sued for $10 million or even $100,000. In other words, companies, especially big national retailers, rely on law enforcement to enforce the law and also understand that there's some sort of theft being built into their algorithms that show their profits and their margins and their revenue and all that sort of stuff. They are so big, they would rather let somebody walk out with $100 worth of stuff, couple $100 worth of stuff, than risk a $10 million lawsuit. Now, that sort of thinking comes out of this lawyerly society that we live in, but also necessitates law enforcement to do their job and enforce the law. The problem is, if that sort of retail climate culture is such that they don't want to risk damaging themselves further by intervening, and also the police don't intervene, such as in states like California, you have a big problem, and there is a big old wide gap where people can just steal stuff. I have sarcastically said to my wife, since we've gotten married and started to go to Target routinely, not so much, not at all anymore, because... But anytime we go into retail stores here, I jokingly say to her, why are we paying? There's no repercussion. Everything that is in our cart, if we just pushed this cart out to our car, loaded the car, and left, nothing would happen. Why do we continue paying? Unfortunately, we have fairly strong morals, and we don't do that, unfortunately for my wallet. But you can. And the problem is, if you have stores that are too lawyered up and want to avoid further litigation by somebody who is injured or aggrieved that by your store from stopping them stealing, and also the police are completely, I don't want to say apathetic because it's not their fault, the law says that they can't, then you have a huge problem with theft. And that culture and societal norm of theft in retail stores gets exported across the country because people see videos on Twitter that you can just smash into a jewelry store and rob it and nothing happens. That's currently the society that we live in. What's going to need to happen is a huge bolstering in law enforcement and laws in general. That's what's going to need to happen in order to stop the chaos going around the country. I'm glad to say that those thieves. Are we allowed to say thugs? I don't know. Is thugs a bad term? It has nothing to do with. I don't even know what race those guys were. Sorry, what they were. That joke didn't land. I don't even know. But they're clearly participating in thug-like behavior. So thieves, thugs. I don't know what the correct terminology is nowadays. I'm glad to see that they're in jail. That's what I was talking about. But at the same time, the corporate side is going to have to get in line too here and say enough is enough for anything to actually make a difference. I would be curious to talk to either one of them to see what I don't know what the deal is. Marcel says we're going to start living like the Mad Max movies. Yeah, that's honestly what it's going to come to. Oh, this is kind of interesting. Sally said this is going to make online shopping, I assume she meant to say more prevalent. They will shut stores down. Oh, dang. Is that part of it? Is Jeff Bezos, registered Democrat, who owns the Washington Post, lobbying states to lower criminal charges for retail theft in order to harm the brick and mortar retail theft industry to bolster Amazon? I don't know. It's probably not it. But maybe, who knows? But speaking of laws, moving on to this. Where is this? This is New York, some school in New York. Did you know that laws, not just specific laws, the law in general, is in fact white supremacy? So says this college kid graduating from some school in New York. And you're going to say, she didn't say that. There's no way that she said that. I'm going to play the clip for you right now. Watch this and be amazed.
To recognize that the law is a manifestation of white supremacy that continues to oppress and suppress people in this nation and around the world. We joined this institution
You didn't really need to hear the rest of that. There's more to that clip, but who needs it? The law is white supremacy. Okay. In other news, countries that are populated by predominantly not white people also have laws. So I'm not sure what you're getting at here. The law, just law in general, like having any sort of societal, cultural rules to abide by that the people have voted on and agreed upon, to have any of that is white supremacy. I wonder if any of the governance in, I don't know, Nigeria, is that law white supremacy? And if it is, I'm going to need you to define white for me. Speaking of sublaws, I wasn't planning on talking about this, so I probably won't. But there is a law in Uganda now that is criminalizing homosexuality, which is not cool at all, in my opinion. Maybe we'll talk a little bit more about that tomorrow, because so if you're unfamiliar with this, there is a law in Uganda that completely, like, if you're caught in any sort of gay behavior, you're risking life in prison. There are a lot of conservative Ted Cruz, notably, that said this is not cool, like, at all. But I think the reason that it's notable is, one, it's just a crazy law, and two, there are a bunch of people on Twitter, and I say people on Twitter, I'm going to wait until there's more prominent voices. We'll wait till Joy Reid has a chance to talk about this on MSNBC tonight. But there were some people on the internet saying, this is what's going to happen here if Ron DeSantis is elected. It's not, like, at all. And I think it's good on several prominent Republicans. Again, I mentioned Ted Cruz because he was, like, the first one that I saw acting on this, saying that, yeah, this is not cool. This is not going to happen here. We have no plans on this happening here. Nobody wants this to happen here. So when lefties point to Uganda and say, this is what's coming if you elect so-and-so, it's just not true. So we'll give that maybe a day to kind of fester in the mainstream media and see if that picks up any steam. All right, moving on to this, because I think this is fascinating. Shoot, I didn't even play the clip of the guy. Here, let me play this clip of this dude talking about the debt ceiling. This is a congressman. Shoot, I forget his name. talking about climate change, and then we'll get into the hilarious climate change video. And we'll do it very quickly. All right, check this out. This is Congressman What's-His-Face talking about the debt ceiling, why he doesn't agree. Check it out.
Number one, we need to stop drilling for fossil fuels completely. But number two, we need an expedited way to get us to clean, renewable energy, or we will continue to have these severe weather events that we have been having for quite some time, and because of the warming of the planet.
That is Jamal Bowman. I don't think I'm going to. We don't need to argue against that. That is something a child would say. That is a child's argument, and there's no need for adults to respond to children making squeamish noises about completely and totally unrealistic things. I will remind everybody that I am a 100% proponent of renewable/clean energy. But I'm also a realist that exists in the real world and acknowledges reality for what it is and understands that that's not possible in today's day and age right now. And also, we were talking about Social Security earlier, talking about the government being very, very bad at managing anything. To say that the U.S. government needs to invest heavily into solar panels and wind energy, not only has the private sector not figured that out, but also the government trying to figure it out, to say that that would be a step in the right direction is almost hilariously ignoring the ineptitudes of the government as a whole. But staying on this climate change thing, I wanted to show you this. Climate activists in Sweden, I believe. Yeah, Sweden. Climate protesters stormed the stage on a Sweden TV dance competition, and what happened next is hilarious. Watch this. Climate nut owned by cameraman. Check it out. I love that. So you see, we're going to watch that one more time. A bunch of climate nerds walk onto the middle of the floor waving a flag, and the cameraman with the boom operator, if you're just listening to this, I'm sorry, you don't get to see. But the cameraman with the boom operator just decks one of them. I love this so much. I love that. Oh, that's great. Let me see. A couple of the comments here. Interesting. Paula says, climate change is basically stealing from the taxpayers. Yeah, it is, because we don't need to we've been through this so many times. We can talk, I don't know. Maybe we'll have another big maybe we'll do that. Maybe every 90 days we'll have a big climate change forum here and talk about all of the things that we should be doing that we are not doing, and all of the things that we are doing that we definitely shouldn't be doing. Riot says, we need to invest in nuclear. Yes. But for some reason, a bunch of singers in the 70s were against nuclear, and now we still are scared as a country to do nuclear. Actually, I don't even know if that's the case. I think what's happening on the nuclear front is that so many people are making big money with quote-unquote green energy initiatives that they want to continue down that path because of the heavy subsidies from the government, which, to Paula's point, is stealing taxpayer dollars, that they don't want to acknowledge that nuclear is probably the best and only way to go forward as far as the energy front goes. So that's probably it. There's enough of a racket going on and enough profiteering from climate change subsidies that they don't want to get into anything else. Let's see. Anything else to get to? That's it. That'll do it for us today. Appreciate you sticking around, tuning in. If you haven't already, Would appreciate you going and following on all of the social media platforms. Just type in JOBOB. There's a thing that we're working on that we're kind of I don't know, it's not quite to the forefront yet, so we'll see. I shouldn't have announced that there's going to be an announcement, but follow on any of the social media platforms, you'll be able to tag along when that does come. Appreciate you sticking around, tuning in. If you, wow, I just said that. We'll see you tomorrow, same time, same place. Ending it on a tired note. Have a great rest of your day. God bless America.